Good morning. My name is Kevin Dillon. I'm a project manager with the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. Today, I'll provide an overview of the BPU's role in offshore wind in New Jersey, along with the initiatives our agency has undertaken to facilitate achieving the state's goal of 11,000 megawatts of offshore wind generation by 2040. Next slide. While New Jersey's capacity target is the overarching goal, the BPU conducts all of its OREC solicitations with the goal of minimizing the impact on the environment and fisheries and localizing a robust supply chain in the state to support the development of its solicitation award winners as well as other projects along the East Coast. New Jersey has undertaken a first-in-the-nation effort to develop coordinated transmission solutions for bringing offshore wind energy ashore. This effort seeks to reduce impacts of onshore construction on communities and the environment, and to drive down costs to ratepayers, because in keeping with the BPU's mission, minimizing cost and risks to ratepayers is always a top priority for the BPU. Next slide. Before diving into the work our agency is doing, first I'd like to highlight the key legislation and executive orders that shape the development of offshore wind in New Jersey. In 2010, New Jersey passed the Offshore Wind Economic Development Act, or OWEDA, which established offshore wind as a Class 1 renewable energy source and directed the BPU to establish a program for ORECs to incentivize development of offshore wind off New Jersey's coastline. ORECs are paid on a per megawatt hour basis for energy delivered to the grid by developers who have won an award through a BPU offshore wind solicitation, with such awarded projects known as qualified offshore wind projects. In 2012, the BPU adopted NJAC 14:8-6, establishing rules that govern the offshore wind solicitation process and requirements for qualified offshore wind projects, such as application requirements for the offshore wind solicitations and the funding mechanism for the ORECs. Finally, there have been a series of executive orders that have progressively increased New Jersey's offshore wind procurement goal. The most recent, Executive Order number 307, was signed by Governor Murphy in September of 2022, raising New Jersey's goal to 11,000 megawatts of offshore wind capacity by 2040. Next slide. Achieving New Jersey's goals requires significant planning and coordination. To facilitate the timely achievement of New Jersey's offshore wind goals, the BPU has published a schedule of all offshore wind solicitations. As the table indicates, the board recently awarded 3,742 megawatts of capacity as a result of our third offshore wind solicitation. Our fourth solicitation is set to open in Q2 of this year. Next slide. Along with our published schedule, the BPU published the state's first offshore wind strategic plan in September of 2020. This plan serves as a roadmap for how New Jersey could most productively pursue the goal of 7,500 megawatts of capacity by 2035, as set forth in Executive Order 92. Currently, the second offshore wind strategic planning process is underway. When completed, this strategic plan will serve as the roadmap for how we can achieve the current 11,000 megawatt goal. The second offshore wind strategic plan focuses on several key areas, including supply chain, infrastructure and workforce development, energy markets and transmission, and environmental and fisheries protection. It also will entail a robust stakeholder process to ensure stakeholder input informs the plan. Next slide. In 2020, the BPU asked PJM to incorporate New Jersey's offshore wind goals into the regional transmission planning process, becoming the first state to use a novel regulatory pathway known as the State Agreement Approach, or SAA. The BPU has used the SAA to pursue a coordinated transmission solution to lower costs to New Jersey ratepayers and minimize environmental and community impacts. In 2022, the BPU approved the Larrabee Tri-Collector Solution, or LCS, which creates a new substation and upgrades the existing grid to enable multiple offshore wind projects to interconnect at a single point of interconnection. Next slide. The BPU has also opened a solicitation for pre-built infrastructure, or PBI, which creates a common onshore cable route to minimize disruptions in communities and reduce impacts on the environment. The project awarded through the PBI solicitation will construct the unenergized infrastructure to carry power lines from the shore to the LCS. The PBI solicitation process enhances competition to drive down costs by allowing for both offshore wind generation developers and transmission developers to submit bids. The BPU opened the solicitation in November of 2023 with bids due on April 3rd. The board expects to make a decision on the received bids in Q3 of this year. Next slide. The upcoming fourth offshore wind solicitation will aim to award between 1,200 and 4,000 megawatts of capacity. The solicitation aligns with New Jersey's clean energy and offshore wind goals of combating climate change, promoting economic development and job creation in New Jersey, reducing environmental and fishery impacts, and achieving these goals at the lowest reasonable cost and lowest risk to ratepayers. The board will make its decision regarding the solicitation for awards in Q1 of 2025. Next slide. New Jersey has launched a second SAA project with PJM, otherwise known as SAA 2.0. The second SAA seeks a coordinated transmission solution for the remaining 3,500 megawatts of offshore wind capacity required to reach New Jersey's 11,000 megawatt offshore wind goal. As with the first SAA, the goal is to enhance competition, to reduce costs to ratepayers, and minimize environmental and community impacts. The SAA 2.0 project is currently in the study phase at PJM. The board will have the opportunity to formally move forward with the solicitation through PJM's Regional Transmission Expansion Planning process in July 2024. A board decision is expected by Q1 or Q2 of 2025. Next slide. The New Jersey Board of Public Utilities would like to thank BOEM for the opportunity to present today. If there are any questions, please contact me using the email provided on this slide. Thank you.
My name is Katie Nolan, and I am an environmental specialist with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in the Office of Permitting and Project Navigation. Today I'm going to talk to you about offshore wind in New Jersey. As regulators and stewards of New Jersey's natural resources, DEP is tasked with finding the balance of protecting our coastal and aquatic resources on behalf of the people of New Jersey while taking important steps to address climate impacts. DEP's role in offshore wind permitting involves significant reviews. The construction of all offshore wind-related infrastructure requires DEP oversight. This includes the wind farm in federal waters, export cables and substations both on and offshore, and port facilities. DEP has the opportunity to review offshore wind projects pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. Through BOEM's process, DEP is a cooperating agency as the environmental impact statement is developed and will coordinate with BOEM and other federal partners throughout the environmental review process. We will also review and comment during BOEM's scoping process for not only projects off the coast of New Jersey, but also projects in neighboring states that may have an impact on New Jersey's coastal resources. We work very closely with the federal agencies listed here. As part of what we call early and often coordination that we do on large cross-program projects, DEP regularly meets with offshore wind developers and have been meeting with Atlantic Shores since 2019. Through regular meetings, DEP reviews proposed activities, discusses specific design plans in the context of our regulatory authority and provides guidance on compliance with our rules. As you can see, the breadth of DEP's regulatory oversight on offshore wind projects is extensive. In reviewing offshore wind projects pursuant to New Jersey's regulations, DEP evaluates potential impacts to coastal lands, aquatic and benthic species and vegetation, wetlands, threatened and endangered species habitat, fish and fisheries, marine mammals, birds and bats, water quality, air quality, encumbered lands, and historic resources. DEP's main regulatory jurisdiction falls within the boundaries of the state as well as our state waters, which extend out to 3 miles off of New Jersey's coast. However, in addition to activities in state waters, DEP reviews projects in federal waters beginning 3 miles off the coast for consistency with New Jersey's enforceable policies. This process is called federal consistency, and it ensures that projects that will have reasonably foreseeable effects on New Jersey's coastal resources are held to the same protective standards as projects within state waters. Through New Jersey's Research and Monitoring Initiative, which is also referred to as the RMI, projects bringing power to New Jersey are required to commit financial and technical support to research initiatives and the regional monitoring of wildlife and fisheries related to the introduction of offshore wind. Through collaboration with stakeholders and subject matter experts, a list of research priorities were established. Research projects are developed and awarded to address the RMI's research priorities. I encourage you to visit our RMI website to get more information about the projects that have been funded thus far. A critical part of the Research and Monitoring Initiative includes communicating, coordinating, and engaging with a number of research organizations and stakeholders. Members of the RMI team sit on a number of regional offshore wind work groups and committees and consistently engage with regional science entities like ROSA and RWSC. DEP's Offshore Wind webpage is a great tool for sharing information and communication. Through our webpage, any applications before DEP will be made available for review and public comments. You can sign up for email updates as well as contact DEP's Offshore Wind team with any questions. Thank you for your time.